It isn't summer without a light, pillow fluffy, spongy, fat-free, sweet treat that's great eaten alone or soaked in fruit and topped with cream. I'm referring to Angel Food Cake. This cake creates a simple and versatile dessert base and is light on the hips. Angel food cakes are an American invention, with the first sponge cake recipe recorded in 1839 in a book called The Kentucky Housewife. However, egg-based sponge and chiffon cakes are found all over the world. An angel food cake is made primarily of egg whites, sugar, and a little flour. No butter or oil, making it unique from other egg-based cakes. I'm excited to share my angel food cake recipe that I love to use in shortcake desserts or dipped in dessert sauces. For the ingredients, you'll need a dozen egg whites, cake flour, powdered sugar, granulated sugar, salt, cream of tartar, vanilla, and almond extract, which is optional. I also provide substitutions in the recipe linked in the description below. In a small bowl, we're going to separate 2 large egg yolks from the whites, and we're going to be using the whites in this recipe. You'll need a total of about 420 to 430 grams of egg whites. And I like to separate mine in a separate bowl just to make sure I don't get any of the yolk in with the white, because that could affect how well your eggs whip up. So your egg whites should be at room temperature. If they are not, then let them sit out for about 30 minutes after you've already cracked them, and that should get them to the temperature they need so they whip up well. As you crack your eggs, you should reserve the egg yolks, and notice I'm putting mine in an ice tray, and I'm going to freeze them. That way they will last as long as I need them to last before I'm ready to use them. And you can use them in so many different dishes. You could just make an egg yolk omelet or scrambled eggs, or you can mix them with other whole eggs and just have an extra yolk or two. You could use them for fried rice, or I actually like to use my yolks as a binder in meat or bean patties. And once they freeze, they come out looking like this. They look the shape of the ice tray. And then I'll pop them out like I do ice, and then put them in a freezer bag and just label what they are. And then I've got yolks ready to go, and I can just thaw them in the refrigerator overnight and then use them however I choose. And once they're frozen, if you find that you can't pop some of these egg yolks out as easily as you want, just put some warm water in a pan and then set this in the pan and let the hot water loosen up around the egg yolks, and then they pop out just like ice. So I always have a couple of extra eggs put aside in case I have one where the yolk breaks, and I did have a yolk that broke. So I am just going to put it in a separate container, or you could put it in the ice tray if you want, and then I'll actually just eat that a little later. Eggs are all cracked and ready to go into our recipes. My ice tray of yolks, I'm just gonna cover them up well with plastic wrap and stick them in the freezer until I'm ready to use them. So go ahead and preheat your oven at 350 degrees. And you want to set aside a either 10-inch bundt pan, or what I prefer to use is a 16-cup angel food cake pan. And for whichever you use, do not grease or butter the pan, because the cake needs to adhere to the edges as it bakes and as it cools. I have made angel food cakes in a fluted bundt pan like this with designed edges, and they don't turn out that great because you have to use a knife to release the edges, and it's hard to get into those nooks and crannies of a dish like this. So I highly recommend at least a smooth internal surface, or like, angel food cake pan. So in a bowl, I'm going to combine 120 grams, which is 1 cup of cake flour, and 120 grams, which is 1 cup of powdered sugar, and then give them just a quick stir to combine. Then I'm going to place the mixture in a sifter into a medium-sized bowl, and sifting breaks up any lumps and it lightens the bulk. Since this is a light and airy cake, the sifting just helps keeps it that way as well. So I prefer to use cake flour in making my angel food cake, because cake flour contains less gluten than all-purpose, and it produces a taller cake and a tender crumb. However, if all you have is all-purpose flour, you can certainly use it, but it may not be quite as light and airy as you might prefer, or that it could be. In a clean stand mixer bowl, or large bowl if you're using an electric hand mixer, or you're doing this by hand, you're going to pour in your 12 egg whites. We're going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt, and then any and all extracts, which for me, I am going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and half of a teaspoon of almond extract, which is optional, but I do like the almond flavor in my angel food cake. And it's just more nuanced even if you can taste it, but I love the almond. Use your whisk attachment or your hand mixer beaters, and we're going to beat on medium speed until the egg mixture is foamy and frothy, which will take about 1 minute. Since we've got some foam and froth going on, now we're gonna add the stabilizer, which is 1½ teaspoons of cream of tartar. It's the acid in the cream of tartar that helps stabilize the eggs and helps keep them fluffy, so that we don't create a deflate gate here. If you don't have cream of tartar, then you can use 3 teaspoons of lemon juice, which is about half of a small lemon, or 3 teaspoons of white vinegar. And we're gonna continue beating on medium-high speed until soft peaks form. Soft peaks have formed when you lift your whisk and you've got some flipping over at the top there. So now that we have that, and notice that our mixture is getting pretty tall there. It's going to continue to grow, but not much more. With the machine on, we're going to add 200 grams, which is 1 cup of granulated sugar. 2 teaspoons at a time because we don't want our eggs to deflate. We're just wanting to sweeten them and give the sugar an opportunity to dissolve. I am using super fine baker sugar, caster sugar here, because it is a lot finer than regular cane sugar and it dissolves more quickly and easily in your liquids when you're baking. If you don't have or can't find baker sugar, don't worry. You can always just use your cane sugar and pulverize it in a food processor or a blender until it's really fine, like the sugar that you see here. Once all your sugar is in the bowl, you want to beat until you have stiff peaks. You can tell you're getting near stiff peaks, if not already there, when your mixture is leaving trails of where it's been. You know when you've reached stiff peaks when you lift up the beater and your peaks do not curl at the top, and we are there. Your whisk can just sit in the mixture. You can leave your beaten eggs in the bowl and continue working from here, but since my bowl is deep, then I find it easier to transfer my eggs to a wider, more shallow bowl, which is what I'm doing, but you don't have to do this. Look at that beautiful fluff. So then we're going to sift about 1/2 cup at a time of our powdered sugar and flour mixture that we've actually already sifted, but that little extra sift just helps to keep the cake light and fluffy. So about 1/2 cup at a time, you're just going to sift it over your meringue, and then we're just going to fold in the flour. We don't want to deflate our eggs that we've taken so much time to fluff up here. Figure 8 usually is you cross it in the center, you go around the bowl, and you lift up and over. So we're not stirring it in, we're just folding it in. And then once you get the first 1/2 cup mixed in a little bit, then you're gonna add the next, sift in about the next 1/2 cup or so until you've mixed in all of your flour and your powdered sugar. Our flour is nicely folded in. So take your pan, whatever you're using. I love an Angel food cake pan because it has a removable bottom, which makes it easy to remove the cake at the end. Remember, this is a ungreased pan. So we're just gonna spoon our mixture. Look how light and fluffy those eggs are into the pan. You don't have to, but I'm just gonna clean up my pan just a little bit because I made a mess. And your cake is going to rise up near the top. So don't worry too much about cleaning it up. We don't want air bubbles in the cake, so take a knife and just swirl the batter around a little bit just to remove any air pockets that might be hanging out in the cake. Bake your cake in the oven on the middle rack for 35 to 40 minutes. The cake should look dry at the top, and if you press it, it should bounce back, and it should be golden brown. Cake is done and out of the oven. Notice it's nice and spongy, it springs back. So at this point, this is where you really want to invert the cake because we want it to maintain its current shape as much as possible. So notice that my Angel food cake pan has legs on it, and they are there so that you can invert the cake like so. And I am placing it just on another cookie sheet just to make it easy, and also it's warm. And then we're gonna let it cool for an hour to an hour and a half. And the cake should hold the shape that it's in. If you're using a bundt pan like this, then you'll want to do the same thing. And notice our cake rose pretty high. If you use a bundt pan like this, and your cake's probably going to be even higher than this. So a way you can get around the inverting upside down on a flat surface is get a bottle, like a wine bottle, and then you invert it over the wine bottle like that. The cake will cool in its current shape without sinking or falling. If you don't invert your cake, then your cake will likely sink some and be denser than maybe you'd like. And because we did not grease the pan, then there's no reason to worry about your cake falling out of the pan because it is clinging to the sides as we speak, and it will cool in the same fashion. Once your cake has completely cooled, we can now remove it from the pan. So about the hour mark, I would start filling the top, as long as it feels room temperature, and then you can put your hands under it and fill the cake itself towards the center there. As long as, again, it's cool and it feels like it's at room temperature, then you can remove it. Go ahead and flip it over, and notice it didn't sink. It stayed the same height as it was when we started to let it cool. Because the cake pan doesn't have any greasing on it, then we're gonna have to help this cake out. So just take a knife, you're gonna run it along the inside of the cake pan, all the way around. This is what's going to loosen the cake to release it. Now we also have to go into the center. If you have a pan like I do, where the center comes out just like that, it's okay if we have a little bit of cake browning on the outside, but we still have the bottom of the pan. So we need to do the same thing at the bottom. You might want to run a knife around twice just to make sure you loosen it up so you don't have any cake that breaks off when you're trying to remove it from the pan. I've had that happen before. All right, let's see how well we did. Yeah, pretty good, not bad. All right, our cake is ready to eat. Notice how thick that is. It's a beautiful cake. It held its shape after baking. So now you have a couple things that you can do with this cake. You can pick the side you like best. I actually like that one because I'm gonna leave this naked. But to serve this cake, you could set it like this or you could flip it. Put it on a serving platter like this. You could decorate it. You could pile fruit on top. You could put our frosting. Just add a little bit of powdered sugar. Even some cocoa powder would be nice. And then that's pretty much it. You could cut it into small chunks and use it to make a strawberry shortcake trifle, or dip the chunks in chocolate fondue or caramel sauce like dulce de leche. This cake has so many uses. Create a custard and just throw some custard on some slices with some fruit. I love how spongy it is and light and airy. So you want to use a serrated knife when you're cutting angel food cake, because a serrated knife will create clean cuts, because it is a very spongy, light, airy, pillowy cake. And look at that. Nice and pillowy, spongy, light and airy. You can imagine this soaking up some great little fruit juices. Imagine it in a custard. The height is wonderful, and that's from the aerated eggs. It's got some structure to it thanks to the powdered sugar and the stabilization of the cream of tartar. And of course, you've got a little bit of flavoring from the vanilla and the almond extracts. It's a wonderful summer dessert, light on the hips because there's no fat in this lovely looking cake. Is it possible to have cake without fat in the same sentence? This is it. You could store the cake whole or cut into slices or chunks. Store it at room temperature in a sealed container for up to a week. For longer storage, place the whole or sliced cake in a freezer bag or container and freeze for up to several months. Then just thaw and serve how you choose. See the recipe link below in the description for many optional flavor and color suggestions. That's right, do you want a pink cake or a blue cake? You could even turn this cake into a chocolate angel food cake. I hope you give it a try for your summer sweet treat desires. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.